At first, I wouldn't use the quick controls a lot because I thought there's nothing that I could use them for. And also in earlier versions, so some years ago, it was really difficult to set them up and connect them to a external controller, and I couldn't figure it out really well, so I basically ignored this function. But in newer versions of Cubase, it became much easier to use them, and so I started looking into it some more. And now I think for some purposes they are really useful and good to know, and I started integrating them in my mix habit, and I will show how I do that. So what is quick controls and how do you use them? At first, let me show some examples or reasons why these could help you improve your working with Cubase. So quick controls are these slots over here, and you basically can assign them to most of the functions that are available in Cubase. For example, you could assign them to your panner or your volume slider. So why would you need a panner or volume slider over here? If you can use the fader, and you also could use, let's say, the mixer, you can set up here your own most used functions for a mixing setup. That is, I think, a very good reason. So let's say you're working on this channel and you want to use that knob. You want to use this band of your EQ filter section. You want to use the send level, the fader, and the panner, and also these two buttons. So you have your project and you're mixing and you want to work on this button. So you load your instrument and you change the value and you close it. You go somewhere else, you work on this channel, and then you come back and you want to work on your volume. So you open it and you change the volume. You go to another channel, you work on that, and you come back and you want to work on your bit crusher. So you open your channel and you open the bit crusher and you turn your knob and you go to another channel and work here, and so on and so on. So you see, sometimes you can find a good solution for that, for example, in the mixer, and that works pretty good as well. But sometimes it is uncomfortable to load up your instrument and find what I want to do and turn the knob, and then if you change the channel and come back, you have to go there and open and close, and that consumes a lot of time. So mostly when you work on a channel, there is like a handful of functions that you need all the time. And sometimes these functions are not very close to each other, so you have to open up an insert or an send or an instrument and so on. What you can do with quick controls is you can place all these functions that you need at one place, and if you go to another channel and come back, you have all these functions that you need available right away. So I'm going to show you how to do that. There's different ways to get your functions into the quick controls, and all of them are really easy to understand. So the first one would be you just use the basic quick controls that are assigned to a instrument. So if you have an instrument channel like here, you can find your quick controls here. So that are these knobs, and mostly these are 8 quick controls, at least in Halion, that you can see down here. And these quick controls can be assigned to your quick control slots if you use the arrow with a bow. So if you click on that, it will load these 8 basic quick controls to your slots here. And if you open up your instrument and move a slot, you can see it already moved over here too, and the other way around. So if I move my slider, you can see that this button turns as well. The other way would be basically the same than the menu that pops up if you use automation. So you click here in your automation and you get a menu where you can choose from, and that menu you will also find if you click in a slot, then the menu pops up and you can just look what you want to have and you click on it and it gets assigned here. So now if I move the panel, you can see it also moves here and vice versa. A third option would be you right click on a button and you can use the function assign it to quick controls. If you have a particular slot in mind, you can also choose it here. So you just click on assign to quick controls and you see it's already been done. And another way is you use the learn function. Therefore, you click the L button and it lights up orange. You go to any slider or function, move the button, and it gets assigned to that slot that you've chosen over here. And now you can move that function that you assigned with your quick controls. So like that, you can produce your own presets for that certain channel where you know you will need, for example, you will need a lot of the volume control. You will probably use the panel. You will probably use send effects and so on. So you can load up to 8 quick controls in these slots. And if you think you need it more than one time and it's really helping you to work with, it is also possible to save it as a preset. Some of these presets are also available here. So if you, for example, need an equalizer, send levels, or just a standard combination of volume, panorama, pre-filter section, and sends, you just click here and some basic things get loaded into your quick control slots. So now if you want to use these, you just select your track and your quick controls get shown right away. And if you have set up them in a logical and good to use manner, you can immediately, if you click on a track and select it, use these functions that you need a lot. You don't have to open the channel editor window or your mixer for that. So there are some buttons. Of course, you have a read and write button if you want to use automation. You also have a reset button, which will reset all these slots to default. You have a learn button for assigning a knob, and you have for MIDI or instrument tracks the button where you can assign the standard quick controls to these 8 slots. This is of course not available here because this is an audio track and there is no standard quick controls. So if you want to, you can change them just by clicking here. You can also rename them if you double click. If you want to change the value, you just use the slider, and if it's not working exact enough, you can use the fine-tuning function that is also available in other places in Cubase. So if you want to move that value very carefully, you hold down the shift button and move the slider, and then you see my mouse moves a lot, but the fader does not. It's just moving a little. There's also another function which could be useful because moving to the left and right is not always very comfortable for changing the values. So if you hold down your Alt or Option key, your horizontal slider becomes a normal vertical fader. That's a little easier sometimes to work. So there's one more function. If you click in a slot and hold down the control button, an advanced menu pops up which will allow you to assign functions to these quick controls which are not related to this channel. So for example, I could assign the vocal volume fader to this quick control. I'm not 100% sure when you want to use this. Maybe there is a situation where you want to assign the same functions from different channels all to one quick control view, so you have an overview, or maybe you have a good possibility to change these values all for different channels at once. But I would say you should be careful for that because you probably work and like 15 minutes later you think this is the volume slider for that track, but it's actually the volume slider for that track. So one more thing that I thought is really cool about quick controls is you can assign them to anything, and it's really easy to connect them with a hardware controller. So I'm not going to talk in detail about how you set up a hardware controller, but basically you go to Studio and you click here, and if you have one of these, you can just load them into your Cubase session here. Or if you don't have one of these, like me, you just use a generic controller. You click on it and you connect it, and you go here to Track Quick Controls. So that was easy with my instrument or my controller, By the way, I use an Akai MPK and the computer just recognized it immediately, and I clicked on learn here. I turned my knobs and all these were found right away. And now if I assign anything to my quick controls, I can use my hardware controller buttons to change anything that is assigned here in my quick controls. So you see, for example, my volume slider, the panner, my low cut. That was a preset that I loaded into the quick controls here, and I can easily now adjust with a hardware button all the values that I want to. That I think is a real time saver and comes in very practical in a mixing session, because sometimes, at least to me, it is easier to just go to a button and you can change the value right away, and it's easier to have a knob in my fingers or probably an actual fader that I can use than using the mouse all the time. So there's one more thing I want to show, and that is right now my first slot is here, the volume for vocals. Here it is also the volume, but it is for my synth. Here it is a low cut. Here it is a panner, and here it is the bass drum level. So all these quick controls number 1 are assigned to my hardware button number 1. So if I turn the button here, the button number 1, it changes the bass drum level. If I turn my button here, it changes the panner. And if I turn my button here, it changes the low cut. So let's say my low cut is set here and my panner is mostly in the middle and my bass drum level is really high. So now I have a problem. If I turn my button for the bass drum level and it is really high, so somewhere, let's say this is 1 to 10, then I'm somewhere around 9. And if I now go here, my button is still at around 9, so somewhere here, but my panner is at something around 4. And if I turn my button now, it will pick up where I left it here. So you see, if I turn my button a little, it jumps where I left it on the track above and messed up completely my value that I had before. I didn't want that, I just wanted to do a slight change. It was somewhere here and I wanted to put it even more there, but it jumped completely to a different value. And the same here, it is really low, and if I now turn my button, it jumps to somewhere in the middle because I just worked here and my button was somewhere in the middle, and now this value is also somewhere in the middle and not where I wanted to change it down here. So to prevent that, you go to your studio setup page and you activate the pickup mode. So the pickup mode basically says it won't change the value unless you come really close to it. So right now I turn my knob, but you see nothing changes because before I was here and I worked on my panner and it's somewhere in the middle. If I go down here now, it's still somewhere in the middle, and if I turn it slightly, it just moves around here, and because my value is down here, nothing happens. So I have to go lower and lower and lower until I come to that point where that was before, and then I can change it. If I go back up to my panel, I'm still low and I turn my button, nothing happens. So I have to go higher, 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 higher. And if I come around here, it picks up the value and it wouldn't mess up completely the values that I had before. So I hope that was helpful to you and you can now integrate the quick controls into your mixing process as well, and maybe it will help you to speed up some things and save time or improve your workflow.